Welcome back, Spy fans. We're talking tonight about The Night Manager Episode 4. This is kind of a series we've been doing, kind of trying out a new format for our television shows. If you missed Episode 1, 2, and 3, you can go back and check those out on our website, spieslikeus.net. But if you've already seen the show and you don't really feel like you need to be caught up, feel free to listen on. But just as a quick recap, our protagonist, played by Tom Hiddleston, is Jonathan Pine, who was a night manager at some kind of high-end hotels and stumbles on some really incriminating information about some international arms deals, who gets recruited by an intelligence officer, Angela Burr, who is wants him to kind of sneak in to the international arms deals and take down the big, billionaire black market guru Richard Roper. Last week we left off with Jonathan Pine signing some business documents under his name to gain trade pass as being the CEO of the company. So this episode we start out with Roper explaining trade pass to him, and I thought it was important to kind of explain this a little bit because it kind of creates some separation. This is kind of how Roper kind of keeps himself safe. And if you remember, Corky was the one that was in charge of running the shadow business, and that's been replaced by Jonathan Pine under an alias Andrew Birch. I kind of liked the idea of this mainly because it's what protects Roper, and you get a little bit of this later on when they're checking into the hotel. You know, Birch is the one that his name is under all of the rooms for the whole gang, so you never really know where Roper is. But this is kind of what sets off Corky's jealousy, so to speak. And he was already really suspicious of Pine because Pine just kind of comes out of nowhere and is now Roper's best buddy because he saved Roper's son's life. And Corky is just kind of like on a mission to like poke at Pine. And now that Pine has stepped up the ladder and is overshadowing Corky, and Corky's kind of stuck to the side, he's like massively taking shots to the point where he gets way too drunk at a restaurant that they're eating at and starts blowing up at Roper and starts talking Roper, you're too blind to see what's going on. You know, there's this like human hand grenade right in front of you and you're not paying attention. So this is kind of one doesn't make Corky look good, but it also kind of raises suspicions with Roper towards Pine. What are your kind of thoughts on this? Because this kind of
does it though. I mean, the theme for me of this episode is nobody's doing their job well. And
right.
I mean nobody.
Right.
I didn't really have anything to say about Roper, except that I really do think he's just like sleeping through this.
Right.
As far, yeah. But let's put more of the blame on Corky here, because Major Corcoran is like, we were kind of given to we kind of think he's smart, don't we?
Yeah, he's smart. It's just Angela and Pine and Oppo have basically thrown shade on him to make him look like a liability because of his drinking problems and his like indiscretion with his partners.
Sure, but he's got the right instincts here.
Right.
But what he does about it is so completely immature. You know, if he's got these concerns, he should act on them. He should pursue like more information. He should, I don't know, try to lay traps for we're just gonna keep calling him Pine, even though he's what,
Birch now?
Right.
Yeah, Andrew Birch, yeah.
And you know, he should be still trying to talk to Roper and lay out the case. Instead, what he does is just make all these snide, fucking smug, self-satisfied, sneering statements to
right.
Jonathan behind everyone's back.
Right.
Which, and you know, just like constantly telling someone like, I'm watching you, I'm watching you, I'm watching you, isn't the way that that's not a good way to go about trying to catch them with their hand in the cookie jar.
Right. They're just not going to have their hand in the cookie jar, right?
Yeah. But he is losing it. It's not tradecraft related, but I do think the writing, and I don't just mean dialogue, but just like the characterizations in the show are so fucking fantastic. And one thing I noticed that I really like is, you know, Corky is he's got a big vocabulary. You know, he's got a classic education.
Right.
You know, he quotes poetry, and he makes a lot of his comments in very elaborately, elegantly phrased barbs that again, he seems like very, very super satisfied with himself over. But when he gets drunk at the restaurant, his sharpness just completely devolves into just like meh, 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 fucking fake French accents, and
Right.
calling people greaseballs and saying, you know, the lobster live in the ocean, no?
Right.
Which it's just such perfect writing because it's like, this is the behavior of someone that is used to, you know, like, you still, when you're really, really drunk, you know, you still think that you can do the things you can do when you're sober, but you can't.
No.
And I don't know, that was just really well done. But yeah, Corky is not, he's all minus 5 points for me in this episode.
Yeah, he just completely loses it and flips out because there's no lobster for Jed or something. And then someone on a table next to him gets lobster, and he just blows up at the waiter and makes a whole scene at the restaurant. By the way, the table next to them that got the lobster salad that Jed wanted, the man that was getting the salad and Corky just goes off on, that was John Le Carre. We had a nice little John Le Carre cameo.
That's fantastic.
It was really fun to see. But you're right. Like, he just completely like loses it and is like outside of his element and is just kind of like throwing a tantrum. You know what I mean? And that's why I think it kind of works for Pine because it's like really adolescent. But like from the camera shots, you can kind of see Roper's paying attention, and the fact that Corky says like, "You have a human hand grenade right in front of you." One thing that did bother me though, like, because you had said that Corky's like, "Oh, I'm watching you, I'm watching you." He actually approached Pine about Jed coming over to the cottage late at night, and I thought that was kind of really bad tradecraft on his part too. You don't want to like let him know. By the way, I saw this. I understand that he mentions that Roper would completely destroy Jed like just ruthlessly. And so maybe like, it kind of seems like Corky, kind of has like a camaraderie with Jed and cares about her, outside of business, and so doesn't want to see her hurt. So I understand why he wouldn't bring it up to Roper, but what I don't understand is why he would be like, "Stay away from that girl. I'm watching you." But I think that's a good kind of lead into like Jed and Pine's relationship has developed a little uncomfortably like close and dangerous.
Yeah, uncomfortable is a word.
Yeah, and I think this is something you and I really need to kind of like dig apart because it's just like really bad, both on Pine's decision making and Jed's decision making. You know what I mean? Jed. So this all kind of starts because the last episode we talked about how Pine goes into Roper's secret office and spots one of her hairs and realizes she's just been snooping around, and he points it out to her, which we marked as like kind of a bad tradecraft idea. But he's like, "Be more careful where you're going," and so that kind of makes her uncomfortable. And I don't know, there's kind of like a little romance a brewing from this, and so she comes out to him in the middle of the night and wants to talk to him. And she says, "Oh, don't worry, no one saw me." And he has this great line. He's like, "You saw no one see you. That's not the same thing as no one seeing you," which I just thought was a great line. But, he's right. This is a really dangerous move on Jed's part. And it kind of it snowballs into this kind of little romance of like like, and that's kind of what Corky is talking about when he kind of approaches Pine. It's just like, stay away from her and blah, blah, blah. I saw you two in the late night interactions or whatever, but this was like a bad move on her part. Like, do you think there would have been a better way for her to approach this?
Well, there's some kind of, well, I mean, yeah, but, I mean, there's some kind of problem with her marriage that is more discussed than shown to
Right.
me. I and I don't know. I guess I mean obviously, well, if she's super attracted to Mr. Hiddleston, then that's a problem in and of itself. But just like there's something I think there's something going on in the marriage that they forgot to put on the screen.
Oh, well, there's a lot of complications, with her and her son secretly sending money to another son that she has. But last episode, she just discovered about the arms deal. She had no idea Roper was selling, like, doing international arms trades to like terrorists and stuff. And I think that drove a wedge. But you're right. There seems to be a lot more of a troubled marriage than we're shown. Right.
Right. And I mean, she's not a pro. She doesn't have an agenda, so I don't have any blame on her to have an affair with Pine. But I don't like I don't like the way that she just seems to just randomly, periodically, just suddenly say like, "Who are you really? No, tell me, like what's going on?" And then like for a while it seems like fine. Oh, okay, well fine, then let's make out. And then later it's like, okay, well let's we'll play along and I'll the thing about like all they had was like one little kiss or something, and he's like, man. I mean, it goes back to the poor tradecraft we called out in the previous episode of even him intruding into her affairs the way he does, or telling her that he knows she was in the office. There was no reason for that.
Right.
But like with the suspicions she's got, like I don't know, her behavior is just it's just too random for me. It's like suspicion, oh okay, let's make out. Suspicion, okay, I'll trust you.
Right.
Suspicion, who are you? Okay, fine, let's fuck.
Right. There may be some kind of subconscious thing where she's seeing him as like a hero that can save her. I mean, like he has that one line, like, "I'm not your way out," when she comes to the cottage.
Right. It's stuff like that. And I'm like, way out of what? I mean, yeah, they've had some testy conversations, but nothing that seems like out of the normal pale of a fucking relatively healthy marriage, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, not whatsoever. I mean, there's the only thing where she's keeping these secrets. But I mean, like her sister or her mom constantly calls her a whore, So I'm sure she's dealing with that. But you're right. It's not like she has this terrible life. It's just more she learns the secret that her husband is like basically supplying like death and carnage across the world. That might mess with her a little bit, but I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like a lot of this is kind of a little over dramatized, maybe. Yeah, but I do like when she comes to the cottage and he sends her out after they kiss. He's like, walk along the beach and say you couldn't sleep and wanted to go for a night walk and make sure they see you, because he just said you saw no one see you. It's not the same thing. Well, like when she's leaving, she wants to be seen because the more she's snooping around, the more suspicious it looks. But if she's obviously walking along, like it's not like she's hiding from anybody, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of plus points there. But what I don't understand is him sleeping with her at the hotel. Like Roper's a smart guy, right? And Corky's already got his suspicions, right? She might be trying to test, Roper. You don't get to be Roper's like a heavyweight like Roper without like, crossing your T's and dotting your I's, right? So this might be her trying to get more information and like compromise him. You don't like from from Pine's perspective, he doesn't have any information about her, really. And he might see like kind of like a troubled marriage, and he knows about her extra son and all this other, and she's obviously not happy, but you know, this could be a ploy to like trap Pine. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I think Pine is a little like indiscreet with this. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
I mean, but let's be clear. Like, I'm not trying to say that if Elizabeth Debicki is trying to get into my pants, that I am gonna offer any resistance whatsoever, like, regardless of the situation. But I definitely am gonna wake up the next day and say, "Oh fuck, I fucked up."
Right. Yeah. Right. One thing I do want to put a lot of blame on her though, when she calls Roper out last episode about the arms deals, he was like, "Look, you have things you don't talk about, like the son. I'm paying for another man's son." She was like, "Oh, you looked into my life." He obviously is capable of like researching stuff. So she actually calls Pine at the hotel when he's out with Roper for the arms deals. She should think like the phone is probably bugged. Like it seems like the scene seems like she's just kind of like, "Oh, I miss him so much. I just got to hear his voice and make sure he's okay." Like she's obviously kind of fallen from him from what we're shown, but it's like he's right. He's like, we can't be on this line. Like, why wouldn't she consider that? Like, I think she's a lot smarter than that. Like, and I think it's established that she's a lot smarter than that. Like, I don't think she's just some dumb pretty face. You know what I mean? She's got some street smarts about her, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I don't really think that Roper's operation is into like Roper is into like tapping the phone conversations of his inner circle. I mean, I don't think he's got that kind of setup.
Right. Well, Corky obviously has some sort of tech stuff, but he wasn't there because he was the one that heard some other stuff, right? He was the one checking up. He was the one that checked Pine's background. So I guess if he's not involved anymore, maybe? I don't know. Well, anyway, Angela's team is listening in and bugging the phones, and they hear that conversation. And Angela calls Pine out about it, that they're having a thing. And so Angela wants to pull Pine out. Do you think that's a good move?
It's the biggest piece of bullshit in an episode that's got a lot of bullshit in it. They've got, I had to go back and specifically like listen to the conversation because I was like, did I miss something? Was there something more there? Like, all they've got is like, I just wanted you to know that you were there. We got to get off the line. There's nothing here that is damning. And even if she did like have, bona, what do you call it? Prima facie evidence that he's having an affair with Jed, fine.
That's perfect. That's stirring the pot, right? That's going to bring a lot of chaos into Roper's life, right?
Sure.
Right?
I mean, if he's, like, I don't know. It's not a reason to pull him out at all.
I agree. And so does Pine, who then refuses to leave. And he actually calls out Angela's team that are at the hotel and tells Roper, "We got to get out of here. There's police. Yeah, there's a few people in the lobby. I'm pretty sure they're English." And then Roper sends out Frisky and watches, and he's like, "Yeah, definitely police." And they get out. So it's interesting. Pine kind of throws Angela's team under the bus.
It's very interesting. It's very cool. It was the most like kind of fuck yeah part of the episode, but yeah, kind of over dramatic, not really necessary, but fun. I like it.
Right? Yeah, super fun. I'm a little worried that maybe they would have killed them. I mean, I guess it's out in public, so maybe not. And it really, if 3 international enforcement agents die, there's going to be investigation. So maybe the best thing is to cut and run. So Pine probably might have factored that. I don't know. It was really cool and fun. I liked it, but I was kind of worried. Like, you could get these people killed. These are not like just like nice people. They're known for all kinds of murder, right? I don't know.
Do we know that? I don't know. I mean, the implications that Corky makes about like what Roper would do to Jed's pretty face if he found out, like, I don't see evidence of this stuff. I don't see, I mean, yeah, like Frisky and Tabby are kind of menacing, but
Right.
we haven't seen them kill or torture anyone.
Right. We actually don't get a confirmation until a little bit later with Oppo. But before we get into that, because what'll lead into that, let's go to London. I know you had a lot of stuff to talk about in London.
So yeah, I mean, London is London. I think in this episode, I think it's best understood if we follow the papers around in their different
absolutely.
iterations. Starting with the documents that he took pictures of and put up on Zitterzatter sometime back. Angela's or Burr. I don't want to disrespect women by using their first names when I always use last names for men. It's a bad habit of mine. I'm trying to break it. Let's see. Burr shows Apo the papers, or copies of the papers. And this is, I guess, minor, but I think this is what started my spidey senses tingling. Was I don't think it's a good idea to do that. Okay. At the very least, like, have someone retype the information, because when he sees she's got actual like pictures of the documents, that is that's like proof that there's a leak. I mean, like a genuine leak of someone with direct.
Someone physically was there. Oh, I see.
Right. Whereas, if you just give them the names and numbers, like, you could have come across those different ways, or maybe have gathered it up from various sources, instead of this direct proof that someone in the chain at some point made a conscious decision directly to put this information into the British intelligence pipeline. There's also a problem too when she gets back per her request, and he's handwritten all these notes that kind of connect things. She's going to go around showing, copies of that exact thing to other people as well. And I'm sitting there going, at some point this is going to come to the attention of someone that like recognizes that handwriting.
That's right. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
And that's a bomb that doesn't go off in this particular episode, but it's the same sort of thing. Just kind of put a little more cover over your information than just showing. But I mean, it's a TV, it's a television, it's a visual medium. It really is so tempting and just so easy to like hand over the documents in front of the camera so that the audience just immediately knows, like, oh, you're talking about that information. Right. So yeah, quibble there. Like, I guess I don't need to follow every single like step, but maybe I could throw it out real quick. It's so she gets that, then she takes that with or we'll call those the annotated documents. She's gonna show those to her boss, Rex Mayhew. The scene immediately, and that's of course after he gets intimidated by some suspicious vans on the street that kind of try to run him.
Yeah, because they offered to bribe him, and now he rides his bike to work every day or something, and two random vans just like kind of give him a scare on the street, and it kind of provokes him. And he like triples the budget for Angela. He's like, they picked the wrong guy. I'm not sure that was a good idea. That scare tactic. That doesn't really.
No, it's not.
Yeah, like right.
But it's okay. So yeah, it was, and it backfires,
right?
Because he triples your budget. He says, you're gonna, take everything you need, to do this job. We won't be intimidated. She asks him who Halo and Felix are, and he looks at her funny. I don't think he actually is on team bad guy.
Mhm.
But it was weird that they had him look at her funny and almost with a little slight smile on his face.
Uh,
Um, and it's right after that scene that Roper gets a phone call where, and he'll talk to Sandy about the contents of the phone call later, but basically that he knows that Rex Mayhew is like onto him or thinks he
uh,
has something on him. So how that information gets to Roper, well, I got to ask like who the phone call comes from. The only people I can think of are Dromgoole or the permanent secretary, um, who we're going to find out is on Team Bad Guy. Both of them are.
uh,
Um, and Dromgoole, like, I'm trying to figure out what he could have told Roper. Like, I guess all that it seems like he really could have told him at that point was, um, they've increased the budget and staffing of an operation that's trying to pull you down, but not enough specific to tell Roper. Like, for instance, he it's not like, hey, dude, they've got the trade pass papers.
right. They don't get that until later. There was a line from Roper earlier in the episode where he's talking to what's the other guy that the wife left him?
Sandy,
Sandy,
Lord
right?
Langbourne or something.
Yeah. He's like saying, yeah, Halo and Felix are completely spooked. They say they don't have much, but they seem to be worried about something. And I think it's just Limpet's existence. But yeah, after they try and scare him, and then Rex triples the budget, something's going on in there. So that's going to shoot up some flags. Um,
Sure. And Roper's response is just to like move up the timetable, which
right.
doesn't fit in with the ultra cautious, impenetrable, makes no mistakes kind of persona that we were sold as an
Right.
audience in the early
He said it
episodes.
multiple times. We run a tight ship, but everybody seems to be fucking up on that ship. Right. Like,
And then further, check this out. Later, we are gonna okay, the some documents are gonna get into Drumghoul's hands. And we'll talk
mhm.
about how in a second. But speaking of making calls to Roper and letting him know what's up, this is the time to call Roper, I think. And maybe he does, but we don't see that. So like, I don't know why we need to see, like, we need to be shown like someone, hey, someone increased the budget on an operation that's looking after you. Be careful. And then of course Roper isn't very careful.
Right.
But we don't get to see the much more important phone call of, dude, they've got numbers and names and all sorts of shit.
Right.
Um, so then how did Drumgoole get the papers? Is clearly that's right after Rex Mayhew shows the permanent secretary uh, and the stuff, and that's the annotated stuff. So again, it's got
Which, by the way,
apples.
I thought was really clever of the secretary. That's the super. I guess that's Rex's supervisor, but she's like the permanent secretary to that department or
Yeah,
something.
if I have this right, the permanent secretary is the highest level of unelected official in the English government. So
Oh
whatever
wow.
whatever like set of bureaus you're on top of,
Uh,
you got a permanent secretary, and then above that is like parliament.
oh okay. But what she does is really interesting to provoke getting the information. She runs into Rex's office and is just like, you know what? Your girl Angela's been ruffling a lot of feathers, and I think we should replace her. Here are two of my favorite candidates. I especially like this one, right? And Rex, he's like, he can't say no to her, right? Because I guess she's his direct supervisor, or like way above his head, right? But instead, he's just like, no, you don't understand. She's closer than anybody to getting Roper. She's like, and then you could see her like smile drop. And he's like, watch, let me show you. And this is for your eyes only. And he basically shows her the family jewels. You know what I mean? Like pretty much everything they have on it. And that's how all that information gets over to Dromgoole and then the Roper, which I really liked how she provoked Rex into showing her these documents. Like, I don't think she ever planned to replace Angela. Like, I think that was just to see what they have already.
Okay, well, that's a generous interpretation, which is it's plausible because, as I mentioned, like in a previous episode in which we hadn't yet learned that the permanent secretary is on Team Bad Guy, she had a perfectly valid, like, when Dromgoole and his guys came over from the River House and said, "Look, we think that this limpet thing should be under us." Rex basically uses the permanent secretary as a shield, and she backs him up on it. And if she wanted to be on Team Bad Guy, that was, and so instead they do the stupid trying to bribe him thing. When the solution right there was just like for her to just side with Riverhouse and say, "Sorry, Rex, I think they have a point."
Wait, was that her in that conversation?
It was, yes.
Oh, well, that's bad writing.
It was the yeah, it was her, and it was, remember, the Langley attaché
Yeah.
was in that conversation as well. That's Felix, or I think Drumgoole is Halo, and she's Felix. So yeah, that was like that was
Langley contact, right?
Yeah, like that was a room full of werewolves and only one villager. Is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, so she should have backed it up then before. Well, because what she does is immediately call Drumgoole and tell him, no, they have everything. So, yeah, you're right. That implies she was always on Team Bad Guy. Unless she was recruited after the fact.
She also, well, yeah.
But we don't see that, so that doesn't help us, right?
Right. And, also it just would have been easier for her to just come in and say, Rex, I'm sorry about that whole thing about, Langley and Riverhouse. They're just not letting up. And, they've made their case to me, and I've agreed we're going to put Limpet under MI6. Sorry.
That's really annoying. I'm going back to that scene. That's her.
Yeah.
That's her the whole time. Why didn't she just... Yeah, no. I did not realize that was the same. I thought that was just a brand new character. That's so annoying.
What else is annoying is, when she's like... She first starts by, like, just kind of picking at him, like, how well do you know Burr? And do you know what she's up to? Kind of stuff. So, I mean, you're right. She is fishing for information.
Right.
So, and that's why I kind of like your theory. What I don't like is Rex Mayhew's like, oh, I don't fucking know. I don't like to micromanage. When he just, I mean, that's a stupid lie that is easily checked, even if she doesn't already know. Because, I mean, these kind of budget changes should be coming to her attention, or at least she could look it up.
Well, he did say, don't ask me where I got it. You don't want to know. So it might be some under the table funding, right?
I guess. Nah. I don't know.
Because you're right. That should go through her. He would have to tell her this is where it's going.
Yeah, I don't know if she necessarily personally needs to sign off on every single department budget change. But I'll go back to, too, like, when these vans come out of nowhere and try to run you off the road on your bike and fucking intimidate you, like, the first person I'm gonna, when I get back to work and I'm all pissed off, the first person that I'm gonna start unloading on is not my subordinates. It's gonna be my supervisor.
Yeah, right.
So it's just like scripty questionable why he never brought that up to her.
That's right. You would think that would go up the chain. By the way, someone tried to attack me.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah. And he would have... Why didn't he bring up the bribe?
That too. Yeah.
Unless Well, no, even if he's trying to keep it under wraps about the whole limpet what they have and stuff, you would think he could still tell like his like the secretary, hey, by the way, Drumgool from the River House just tried to bribe me.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess there's that. There's also there's a bunch of stuff that like as information like comes to Team Good Guy that they don't act on in realistic ways, which totally went past me on the first watch
Mm-hmm.
of the episode, but on the second watch of the episode, I actually thought it kind of was insulting my intelligence a bit, and actually a lot.
Right.
And I felt so weird about it. I try not to read other people's reviews before we do the show because I don't want to be colored on them. But I was so pissed off by this episode, honestly, on a tradecraft level. Keep in mind, I'm keeping like plot and story separate here. I love the story. I'm really annoyed by the plot. But it's overwhelmingly good reviews. But the few bad ones I could find, they're talking about exactly what I'm talking about, and they're saying like the directing and the excellent writing like really it does a great job of papering over like glaring holes in
Right.
people's judgment and the decision process. And it could be an editing thing. It could be that in the edit room where some of this like fell apart and things were put in a different order
Uh-huh.
than they originally were in the script or in the
Mm-hmm.
novel.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen before. The other major like intersection of the, I mean, she shows the papers to fucking everybody in London, it feels like. And that, it pisses me off when she yells at him about like, I told you these were for your eyes only. And
Right.
first of all, no, you didn't, at least not on screen. And second of all, who haven't you shown these papers to?
Right. Well, she hits up that guy Harry. By the way, we
Uh-huh.
get a porch bench scene out of that, which
Yeah.
was great.
Two.
But there's a guy, yeah, two of them, yeah. But there's a guy at the River House in MI6 who she's trying to keep this whole op away from. But I guess they have a history, and she thinks of him as like a good guy, like an honorable guy, a
Sure.
guy. And so she just sends him the papers, like mails them to him, and he gets them in the River House. You would think that mail is like checked or
Oh
something,
no no no
right?
no 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 no! You got that wrong. Actually, that was a really clever bit. He gets a doctor's appointment notice, a reminder about his doctor's appointment.
Oh, I thought in that envelope was like copies of. Oh no, that's right. She hands it to them at the park bench
In
with the
a
newspaper.
in a folded
That's
newspaper. Yeah,
that's right. Oh wow.
that part
Oh,
was
I did
cool.
miss that.
That part
That
was
is
really
really
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whatever it was on the doctor's appointment, like however it is, it's code for meet me at this time at this bench,
Right.
at this park bench, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, and then that puts him into the pipeline of people that could be leaking information about what Burr's up to. But I think my instincts are serving me well here. I think Mayhew's clean, and I think Harry's clean. What happens though in this conversation at the park bench? Like, she shows him the papers, and she kind of soft intimidates him, like, you're a great guy, you're just easily misled, and it would be a shitty way for this to, to be the way that your career ends. And I don't get what hold she has on him that he just basically fucking spills everything. I mean, he says, yeah, we've been forging Ministry of Defense certificates on weapons, and we're paying off. I'm getting paid off along with the Langley attaché to cover up, and we're profiting off of this arms deal stuff. I mean, he gives her everything.
Yeah.
And promises more, because he's
Right.
gonna leave some files at a dead drop at a library that her team's gonna pick up the next morning. So at the beginning of this, near the beginning, well, the very beginning of the episode, Roper explains the trade pass shell game to Pine. And I don't, either I'm missing something or the script doesn't care, but it all just doesn't seem all that incredibly clever to me. But then our next scene is when Burr is showing Apo the documents, and she's like, I was hoping you could connect the dots for me. And as an audience member, I want to raise my hand and say, yeah, could someone connect the dots for me too while we're at it? Because I just see like, military hardware and numbers, and I guess now attached to names. And then now with all that connected, then that gets leveraged into an even bigger drop of information where they've literally are talking about like Roper's doing this, Roper's doing that. This is the arms deal. This is how it goes down. Noticed that the way that she explains the way the money stuff works is totally different than what Roper told Pine. Mm-hmm. So maybe she just doesn't understand it as well. Or maybe Roper is maybe not telling Pine the entire truth. What I think is that this TV show doesn't really care. These documents are taking on a distinct MacGuffin smell to them, to me. They're an excuse for people to like do the secret roundabout, here, I'm going to share a secret with you, and we get a dramatic scene out of that. Like person A says, person B, keep my secret. Person B tells person C about the secret, and we get a dramatic scene out of that. Person C tells person D that they know, and then we get a dramatic scene out of that. Person D leaks to person A, hey, I know about the secret. We get a dramatic scene out of that, and then person A can go back to person B and yell at them and say, what the fuck? We get a dramatic scene out of that. Like, I just feel they're milking this stuff for like a lot of story stuff, but the information that they've got at many points, I'm like, what is the distance between what they know and what they feel they need to know to take actual action or to raise the alarm? Especially like by the end of the episode, she's got Roper attached to all these like money deals with names and numbers and knowledge of like locations and names of ships and payoffs to MI6 and payoffs to Langley. Between here and where is like, what are we missing? I feel like if this show wanted to be more like a procedural kind of thing, at some point someone needs to say a line like, what we're missing is this. Like, tell me, like, set up the board game to me and tell me like what constitutes a win.
Right.
Someone needs to say like, God, if only we could get him to sign up, blah, blah, blah. Or if only we could get like video of him in the same room with dude or something like that. So that I would understand like with all the information that they're collecting. And I'm annoyed that, as soon as I know about Halo and Felix, like Roper suddenly becomes a much smaller concern to me. I don't care about Roper anymore. Well, of course, Burr's got she's Captain Ahab though, right?
Right. Pretty much. Yeah, and she's chasing Roper as her like, Moby Dick. Yeah, absolutely.
And she does get her late night speech with the other lady on her team, explaining like, how she lost her hand to the alligator.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So maybe there's something where she's not doing what I think she should do because it's gotten personal to her. Mm-hmm. And maybe the show just slightly fell under the bar for me of like justifying that. because I'm
Well, it
just
seems like she's trying to catch him red-handed, and that's what like Pine is promising her. By the way, I'm so close. Don't worry, you can't pull me out. I'm close, and you'll get him red-handed, and blah blah blah. And that's kind of, but she still kind of wants to pull him out. You're right. There is kind of a disconnect. It seems like she's consumed with like chasing the white whale, but then also keeps a cool head. I don't know.
like
You're right. It's weird.
I'm honestly starting to become concerned that the plot is the final resolution is going to have something more to do with Roper and Jonathan Pine on a rooftop somewhere than like some kind of like what I expect from John Le Carre, like
Right.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, like the stuff going on there. It was clear. I understood like all the moving parts. I understood what we had and what we needed, and
Right.
what were the difficulties and the hurdles that were stopping us from getting from A to the finish line. Absolutely understood everything in A Most Wanted Man. Like, not that I knew everything that was going on, but I knew what I knew. I knew what the characters knew and what they didn't know.
Right.
Here, I'm like, I don't think you guys even care about this stuff. I think you just want to talk about spy stuff, talk about leaks and moles, and I'm doing a thing where like I just have little Muppet hands like yapping at each other. And then it feeds into a broader picture too of like I also am feeling a little left behind and lost about like what Pine's operation did they have a plan? I don't think they have a plan. I think they have a plan of getting him in, and then what? I presume there was a lot more discussion and preparation, and maybe they planned out the zitter zatter thing. Like, you find anything, here's a secure way you can communicate with us. But besides sending the documents he did, like, he's collected a lot of information since then, which he, again, I don't think he even needs the kid's cell phone anymore. At this point, he's far enough into the circle. I mean, they're giving him his executive credit card and all his suits and stuff. I'm sure he's allowed to have a cell phone at this point.
Right.
So he's not giving her information, and it's annoying to me that the show is kind of forgetting like what the point of his operation is on a plot level.
Absolutely. It seems like they focused more on the story in this episode than keeping consistent tradecraft, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it feels like what this episode mostly does, besides being, because also like Pine, he just doesn't do much in this episode except get tangled into his stupid relationship with Jed. Except absolutely. At the end when he pulls off that weird like super double cross thing, which I applaud. It's super exciting, but it's concerning for me as to where the show is headed. What London mostly did was like kind of take its time and in a clever, dramatic, well-written way kind of give us more information about who's on team good and who's on team bad. Mm-hmm. And absolutely kind of disturb us, with the extent of the conspiracy. Right. But kind of not caring at all really about the details of what the conspiracy is up to or what the nuts and bolts mission is that we're trying to accomplish. So I'm still super on board with the show, but I can, every single character that I know their name, except maybe Tabby and Frisky, and maybe the Russian sailor, are fucking. Well, I don't know his name, but like everybody's fucking up, I think.
Yeah, like I was saying, like for a group that runs a tight ship, they sure fuck up a lot. But it seems like this episode was more of just kind of moving pieces into place and focused more on a story. To, like you said, we're just gonna have like some intense like face off with Roper and Pine at the end or something. And I think that's where it's headed. At least that's what it feels like. But yeah, I think that's about it for episode 4. Did you have anything else you wanted to throw in? Or?
No, that's everything I've got.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's episode 4 of The Night Manager. Join us next week for episode 5. And you can listen to us at our website, spieslikeus.net, or search us on your favorite podcast app, Spies Like Us Podcast. Make sure you put in the podcast so you don't pick up the Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd film. And you can follow us on Twitter and tell us what you think. If you like us or don't like us, either way, just say hello and give us a shout out. Our Twitter is spies_like_us. And you can go to facebook.com/spieslikeUsPodcast. Would be our Facebook page. But yeah, that's about it. We'll talk to y'all later.
The preceding transmission sampled the song Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net.